Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I'm well. No, you're not imagining things. Yes, I'm in my shed. No, there has not been a change of plan. The garden is going to be, people have seen me arriving and are messaging me. Hang on, okay, yeah. It's just they haven't, the council have been really tardy with sending names and phone numbers of the next chunk of people on the waiting list. And it's such a shame because my garden is, I still think of it as mine. Until someone's taken it over, it's mine. It's going to rack and ruin. But that's kind of why I'm here today. We're going to have a two-pronged approach to this, both if you are someone who's been gardening for a long time but has had a break, or someone who's just got their first plot. Because the state my plot's in, it's the perfect example. It's going to be a perfect example, but we're starting in the shed because I've planned it really wrong today. There's a work party going on, so there's mowers and strimmers all over the site. They should stop in a little while and then we can go out. Yeah, I've just lost my train of thought because I'm looking at, you can hear it's a little bit echoey in here as I'm gradually emptying it. So that's kind of why I'm here. I'm here to carry on emptying the shed. Obviously I'm doing it all on foot with my granny trolley, so it takes, it's taking a lot of trips backwards and forwards. There's also been a lot of gifting and giving away of stuff. More of that in a separate video because I am going to do a final video here. But yeah, so a few days ago I popped down, and this is where the start of today's video comes from. I popped down and it was the first really sunny day, well, sunny and warm day we've had this year. We've had a couple of sunny days in January and February, but obviously not warm. So this is the first time there's some real heat in the air. It was sort of 22, 23 degrees, gorgeous. And I'd come to get another load from the shed, but actually, because it was such a lovely day, I wanted to go a bit slow and hang around a bit, and suddenly a lot of my fellow plotters were out. Some of them for the first time this year, or only say the second or third time, but a lot of folk were out and about, so I hung around, chatted, it was just lovely. But collectively what so many folk said, and this is the point for today, is people were talking about how hard it is to come back to the garden after winter. And we have had it wasn't a particularly cold or harsh winter, but it was wet. It's been so wet. So most folk, they come to their garden quickly through the winter and even into the spring, quickly grab their harvest, whatever it is, dash back home, do not want to spend time here because it's grotty in the foul weather. And one of my fellow plotters hit the nail on the head, and he said it's like throughout the summer we all have that habit of we come to the garden every day to water, to tend, or not necessarily every day but frequently, and in the winter our habit becomes that we stay at home, we hunker down. And he's really struggling to break that habit. He's struggling to get back into that mode of being in the garden. And I'm sure loads of you experienced that too. So what I always say, and I've mentioned it before in videos, and I always say it to chums here as well, if you've had an absence from the garden for whatever reason, it might be winter, it's been a really long cold winter, you might have been ill, had an accident, you've got a broken limb, maybe you've got family issues, whatever the reason. We all know what it feels like if you've been away from the garden for 3 or 4 months. It's really hard to get back. It's hard to get back in the habit, but also it's that feeling of being daunted by the amount of work that needs doing, because it almost feels like having to start all over again. And I'm going to show you in my garden in a minute how it's not quite that bad. But if you're feeling that, like, oh, it's so daunting, I just can't, I can't face it, my advice is force yourself. Pick a day, a Saturday, if you're working Monday to Friday. pick a Saturday and say, whatever happens on that day, I am going to go to my allotment. Now, you're not going to do any work, and that's the beauty of it. So you don't have to be scared about the amount of work, because on this particular day you are not going to do any work whatsoever. Just go there and be there. Just sit in your garden, and yet it's a state, and the initial sight of it may be really disheartening and overwhelming, and oh my god, well, what am I going to do, where am I going to start? You know, okay, acknowledge those emotions, they're real, acknowledge them, and then set them to one side. Say, okay, yeah, I do feel overwhelmed and I do feel sad at the sight of my allotment, but it's not the end of the world and I can fix it. And then simply just go and sit in your garden, wander around, talk to your plot friends that you haven't seen for ages. People will be delighted to see you again. I promise you, it's always the way here after winter. We're always delighted to see each other again after those long winter months. So yeah, just literally force yourself to go down there, but not work. Just allow the garden to once again work its magic on you and fill you up with that, oh yeah, enthusiasm and joy for it, and love for it. Just allow yourself one day to fall back in love with your garden and with all your neighbours. And you might take a notepad and pen, you might take a notepad and pen and begin to make some notes of all the jobs that need doing, but you're not going to do any jobs that day. This is just a day for falling in love, and that's it. And then next time you come, you'll know exactly what you're going to do, because you've made your little list, and rather than seeing the everything that needs doing all in one go, which is overwhelming, you'll have had a little wander around and identified all the jobs. So on your next visit you say, right, my first job today is bed number 1. That's all I'm going to do, is bed number 1. And if you keep at it like that, you'll soon get your plot back on its feet. So, gosh, it really is rather noisy out there. Okay, let me just go through some ideas in here. Hang on, I'm just going to step outside and see how noisy it is. It really is very noisy. So I'm just going to give you a quick look. Oh my goodness. So I don't know where that barrow's come from. So cement this in your head, and I can talk us through the plan of action. If this was your first ever plot, if you were to get given this plot, what would I recommend you do? Or if you were coming to this plot after a long absence, what would I recommend you do? And yes, it looks a lot, doesn't it? Oh my goodness. Look, nature is taking over. Look at these chard though. Oh my goodness. They're huge. And the lavender. Oh yeah, come on, it's far too noisy out here. But I think I've got some really good ideas and practical advice and tips for you. If, for example, like I said, if you were returning to this, or if you had been given this by the council, where to start, what to do. Goodness me, really noisy out there. I think it might be the first work party this year. Yeah, it's noisy. I can't stand the noise of those petrol streamers, but folk are doing good work tidying up around the site. Right, now you've seen what my garden looks like. It's a shocker, isn't it? How quickly it looks messy. But like I said, either way, if you're returning from a long absence, so if I was starting this garden again, everything I'm about to tell you, this is what I would do. Or if this is your very first allotment, or not necessarily even your first allotment, but if you were given this allotment tomorrow by the council, well, firstly I'd say lucky you for 2 reasons. One, wonderful people on this site, lovely neighbours, lucky you. But also lucky you to get my soil. I'm still calling it my soil because it has had so much organic matter added over the years, whether it's, you know, compost bin after compost bin after compost bin, so much leaf mulch over the years. Horse manure, it's had a lot of help, shall we say, the soil. So yeah, lucky you. However, it looks in a state, and also, oh no, I'll talk about all my bits and bobs in the last video. So, what I would do right now, my absolute priority right now with a plot in this state would be to sow seeds. You might think, Vivi, you can't, no, you're mad, it's a mess out there. I would literally, I think you could turn this plot around in a long weekend if you're physically able-bodied. So what I would do is, on the first day of my long weekend, I would spend the whole day sowing seeds into pots or modules. So you would miss out on a few things, you know, carrots, parsnips. Well, you could do parsnips and you could do them in loo rolls, I suppose. But generally speaking, anything that you would normally direct sow, you might have missed the chance for now. But, so if your garden looks a bit like mine, it's kind of what I'm saying is, don't worry, it's fixable, it's doable this year, this very year. So, a whole day sowing in pots and modules. I would sow squash, cucumbers, courgettes, tomatoes, beans, myriad beans, climbing beans, bush beans. I would sow chard, spinach, beetroot, lettuces, all sorts of lettuces. What else would I be sowing? Oh, brassicas, all my brassicas. So even though we think of them as a winter crop, you just about get some brassicas going now. I mean, it's pushing it, but that's what I would do. I would sow cavollo nero, calabrese, purple sprouting broccoli, Savoy cabbage type, some dark green winter type cabbage. A whole day of sowing and then set them up somewhere, because then at least now, as we progress over the next 3 to 4 weeks, your plants are growing, so you can rest easy that you're not in a rush to clear a bed to sow in it if rushing isn't possible at the moment. You know, you might be recovering from an illness, for example. But yeah, I would spend one whole day sowing everything, and pretty much the only things you would miss out on, therefore, potatoes, onions. But yeah, you could do carrots and parsnips in loo rolls. Get everything sown. Peace of mind. And then on my next day, I'd look at all those weeds and I'd see 2 potentials. One that's a negative potential and one that's a positive potential. So the negative potential is, at the moment, those weeds, they've gone mad because we've got this warmth, we've had plenty of rain, so they've put on a big spurt of growth. But they're not flowering yet, and they certainly haven't gone over to seed. If I didn't get a wriggle on, and if they all went over to seed, the potential for problems down the line is huge. I would be giving myself so much work for years to come if I didn't tackle them now. If I let them go to seed, go all over the plot, and other people's plots as well, that's not fair. So, potential for seed shower disaster. But on the other hand, what I see is the potential to start making compost, because while they haven't formed their flowers and their seed heads, I can get everything chopped up, dug out, chop, into the compost bin. There are a couple that you don't want to put in the compost bin, the perennial stuff like bindweed, and if you don't know what that is, ask one of your plot neighbours. They will tell you immediately what bindweed is. That does not go in the compost. But pretty much everything else out there, I would spend a day going hard at it to just weed and get them all chopped up and all in the compost bin to start. So by the end of 2 days, firstly, you'll know you've got all your seeds sown. Wonderful. And you've cleared your allotment of weeds. And maybe it takes 2 days, but so over the course of 3 days, along a bank holiday weekend, the plot will immediately look much, much clearer. So another thing for whoever gets my plot, where they've got a bit of a head start, is there's no rubbish to clear. I've made sure that I've left no rubbish behind. There's little bits and bobs left behind, but they're useful bits. So you don't have to clear any rubbish. But that might be something else when you just first get an allotment, that you spend a day just clearing rubbish. You might, but you see, the other thing is, as you're doing all that weeding, you can continually be looking around yourself and think, especially when you're chopping the weeds, you can be thinking about the layout. So now again, if you're just returning from a long absence, you know your layout. If you were being given my plot for the first time, you might think, oh great, there's a really good structure and layout to this, I don't need to do anything. That's why I mean, someone's going to be really lucky, they can turn it around in a weekend. But yeah, so the main thing is, get your seeds sown so they can be getting on the way. Get those weeds out before they can flower, seed, whatever. And then probably the next job I would do is to cut the grass. Simple thing of cutting the grass and doing the edges, because immediately it'll make the garden look tidier and look like it's kind of ready to go. And I think just doing those 3 things, getting the seeds sown, getting the weeds out, getting the grass cut, by the end of those sessions you can look at the garden, it looks so much better, and that will give you a surge of kind of confidence and pride and yes I can attitude. Wow, look at everything I've done, I can do this, yeah, I can really do this. Trust me, you can. And then from then on, over the next few weeks, because obviously when you've got all your seeds in the pots, most of them can just sit in their pots and grow until they're ready to plant. Some of them may need pricking out and potting on into bigger pots. But then you can say to yourself, right, I'm going to give myself the next 3 to 4 weeks. You might have a session where, like in this garden, you go around with the barrow, put all the bricks in it, take them to one end of the garden and stack them up neatly where the bricks were holding cardboard down. Most of the cardboard's been eaten by now. But yeah, it's a case then of one bed at a time. Do they need digging, or do they just need a little bit of a gentle fork? Do they just need a bit of a raking? You know, getting them ready to take all those plants that you're happily growing away in the background. Easy. Am I making it sound too easy? I think I made some notes about this. Obviously every site is different, and what you get given when you first get a plot is going to be different every time. But I think the main thing at this time of year, if you're getting your plot right now, those 2 things is get your seeds underway. Because if you spend, let's say you don't sow any seeds, and you spend the next 4 or 5 weeks working hammer and tong at clearing your allotment site, we get to the middle of June and suddenly it's like, yay, now I'm ready to plant, and you've got nothing to plant. And for quite a few things it will be a bit too late to put the seed in by then. So I think if nothing else, get your seeds in pots and get the weeds out before they've got time to flower and make your life miserable for the next 10 years, because they will. And then everything else on the top is set dressing, really, isn't it? It will depend what you've got. You might want to say to yourself, on one of the days, I'm just going to spend time going around the plot, you know, picking up rubbish or picking up bricks where I don't want them, checking out, oh, is there a dead plant? Are there dead plants? I think part of my rose has died completely. You know, the big bushy tree rose. I think it's a goner. So take that out. Just tidying and digging and raking. I've made it sound too easy, haven't I? But I'm just saying all that because I want to help inject a bit of enthusiasm for any of you who may be lagging after the winter and think, no, it's all too much. Or for anyone who's just got their first plot of that kind of, just get the seed sown and spend 4 weeks digging and you'll be fine. Right, I think one of my neighbours is going to come and see me, so I will say cheerio for now, and I will catch up with you all anon. I'm going to bring that over in a minute, June. Oh, she's in here. I've got gifting. I'm gifting today. Getting some of these bits and bobs of things that I'm not taking with me to other people. I'll talk more of that in the next video, which I might... I don't know, it's still noisy. We'll see. Anyway, I'm waffling now. Just happy being down here. I will see you all again soon, probably back at home for the next one. But there will be at least one more. There will be at least one more from the garden because I've got things to do here. So when that time comes, I'll be really happy to share that with you. But until then, for now, happy getting back to it if you've had a chunk of absence, and happy getting stuck in for the first time ever if you just got your first plot. Yay! I'm really happy for you. Right, until whenever, cheerio.